Was Jesus a Jew? Well, yes and no. The answer to this controversial question is way more complicated and way more important than most people realize. This is the first video I plan to do in the weeks leading up to Christmas, where I'm going to cover controversial topics about who Jesus is. And today we're going to answer the question, was Jesus a Jew? All right, let's begin with the obvious. First, tribally. Jesus descended from the tribe of Judah. Matthew and Luke both trace Jesus' lineage back to King David, who was from Judah. There's debate about whether the genealogy in Luke is Mary's or Joseph's, because as far as the Bible provides, we have no way of knowing if Jesus' earthly body had genetic relation to Joseph or not. Though we do know, regardless the answer to that question, that Jesus was Joseph's earthly son. And so even if he was just merely taken on by Joseph as his son in an adoption sense, Jesus would still take on his lineage. That's how it worked back then. So we can say tribally and genealogically, yes, Jesus was a Jew. Second is geographically. Those who were from the kingdom of Judah or the region of Judea were considered Jews. And we know that Jesus was born and raised and ministered in this region. So geographically, yes, Jesus was a Jew. Third is scripturally. So we do know that Jesus observed the Torah. He quoted the scriptures constantly. And according to his discussion with the Samaritan woman, for the sake of not going into a rabbit trail there, let's just say that Jesus was affirming because he says, we worship what we know. So he's kind of associating himself, I would say, to Jews. So yes, scripturally, Jesus was a Jew. But here's where it gets interesting or complicated. Term Jew does not mean the same thing today as it did 2,000 years ago. And I would say this is the main reason why so many people get confused. The term Jew today is very strongly tied to the religion of Judaism. That is not the context that is provided by the Bible itself and history and facts when you use the word Jew in ancient times. As I've discussed in an older video, we know historically a Jew in later Old Testament times was someone who was from the tribe or the kingdom of Judah. It was used by non-Israelites who were discussing and talking about the Israelites from the kingdom of Judah. Then in the New Testament times, we see throughout the Bible where it talks about the Jews, and it's usually talking about the leaders of Israel, the teachers of Israel, who are often positioned to be the bad guys. And then later, after the Gospels, the term Jew is really referring to those who have accepted Christ, who have come to faith in Jesus. So when someone says Jesus was a Jew, we have to ask ourselves, what do they mean by Jew? Because if they mean the equivalent to modern day Jews, those who observe Rabbinic Judaism, then that's a problem because it's simply not historically accurate. And here's an awkward part that isn't really spoken about much. Modern Judaism is based primarily on the traditions of a specific group of people that are from Jesus's time.
The Pharisees.
The ultimate point I'm trying to make here is that what it means to be a Jew today, which is ultimately just being an observer of Judaism or being descended from a mother who observed Judaism, is not equivalent to what it means by saying that Jesus is a Jew, because the Jewish religion did not exist in Jesus's time. It did not come about until after the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. Why split hairs about what the term Jew means? Why be so tedious about defining this word in order to answer the question whether or not Jesus was a Jew? Without qualifying and defining your term of what a Jew is, the average person is going to insert into that word their modern context and understanding. And it leads people to hold on to theological points and understandings that have real life impacts, negative impacts in our world today. Saying that Jesus was a Jew without qualifying that term makes people think that if Jesus were walking the earth today, that he would be observing Judaism. Judaism explicitly denies that Jesus is the Messiah. It's built on the traditions that he condemned. And I don't say this to dog anyone who's observing Judaism today. I'm simply trying to be honest to the facts. Second, it helps us understand biblical and modern context better. If we just observe the conflicts between Jesus and the religious leaders of his time, it really exposes a massive fault line in the idea that modern Judaism is the same as Old Covenant worship. Jesus' disagreements and condemnation of the Pharisees and how they lived out the law. Never once did Jesus identify himself with the Pharisees. Rather, he rejected them, he publicly condemned them, and called people to not be like them. So clearly, Jesus didn't see himself as the same kind of Jew as the Pharisees. While the Bible referred to the Pharisees as Jews, and perhaps while the Pharisees might have considered themselves Jews, Jesus made it very clear in his words and his actions towards them that there was a great divide between them and that they were not on the same side. And third, I think it really clarifies Christianity, because Christianity isn't Judaism plus Jesus, and it's not a Gentile religion that was grafted on to Judaism. Rather, Christianity is the intended destination of Old Covenant worship. And Rabbinic Judaism and Christianity, they're essentially two different faiths that sprouted from the same foundation, which is not Judaism. So at one end came Rabbinic Judaism, which denies Jesus as the Messiah. And then on the other hand came Christianity, which saw Jesus as the Messiah, saw him as the fulfillment of Israel's story, and saw him as the heir through whom we receive all God has promised. So was Jesus a Jew? Yes, genealogically, geographically, and scripturally, Jesus was a Jew. But no, he also was not a Jew. He was not a Jew as you would define it today. He is not equivalent to modern Jews. Many Jews as it's defined today are not genealogically Jews. They are not geographically Jews. And if they reject Christ, according to the New Testament, nor are they true Jews. Again, I'm just saying this to stick to biblical facts. This is not to attack or demean anyone, as many people try to claim. We should be able to talk about things in an honest way and not always see it as trying to bully people. That's not the point. I'm not telling anybody to go out and hate people. I'm just trying to speak to historical facts. So let's not always bring up anti-Semitism and bullying when we're talking about historical and biblical facts. But yeah, I just think making this distinction is important because it really removes confusion. It helps clarify perspectives on many different things when it comes to Jesus and the Bible and Christianity. And I think therefore it can clear up some false theological perspectives that a lot of people hold to based on those conflations and insertions of modern contexts that shouldn't be going on. But my hope is in the next video to tackle another controversial question about who Jesus is. I haven't really got all that pinned down yet, but that is my intention. So feel free to share in the comments any thoughts or questions you might have about who Jesus is, or any interesting topics you would like me to dive deep on and make a video about. Either way, if you found this helpful, I would hope that you would share it with someone who you think might enjoy it too. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.